A cold-hearted billionaire CEO orders security to remove a feverish 10-year-old girl from his hospital entrance. But when she whispers she has a message from someone from his past, his perfect world begins to crumble. An envelope with a few coins and a handwritten letter will force him to confront the abandoned child he once was. A little girl without a family, a powerful man without a heart. As her grandmother's life slips away, they form an unexpected bond that will heal them both. Some connections are forged through blood, others are chosen. The Walker legacy, a heart reclaimed, a story of loss, redemption, and the family we find when we least expect it. Before continuing with the story, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment where you are watching from. Your help is very important. Ethan Walker strode through the gleaming lobby of Walker Medical Center, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble floor with military precision. At 42, he commanded the room without effort. 6'2", impeccably tailored in a charcoal Tom Ford suit with steel-gray eyes that rarely betrayed emotion. "Good morning, Mr. Walker," the receptionist chirped, her smile a touch too wide. Ethan nodded curtly, not breaking stride. Pleasantries were inefficient. His phone buzzed with the familiar cadence that signaled his executive assistant. "Walker," he answered. "Sir, the board is assembled in the penthouse conference room. They're waiting on your quarterly projections. I'll be there in 3 minutes." He ended the call without waiting for acknowledgement. The Walker Empire, a sprawling conglomerate of medical facilities, pharmaceutical research, and healthcare technology, had just posted its 15th consecutive quarter of record profits. As CEO and majority shareholder, Ethan had transformed his grandfather's single hospital into a multi-billion-dollar corporation that spanned the eastern seaboard. Success to Ethan was a mathematical equation: hard work plus strategic brilliance minus emotional entanglements. The last variable was key. Sentiment was a luxury he'd abandoned at age 8 when his parents' private jet crashed in the Alps, leaving behind an awkward child and a fortune in trust funds. The elevator ascended to the executive level, its silence a welcome reprieve. Ethan reviewed mental notes for the meeting: acquisitions to propose, underperforming divisions to restructure, competitors to neutralize. Business was war conducted in boardrooms, and Ethan never lost. When the doors opened, his assistant materialized, tablet in hand. "The Singapore merger documents arrived for your signature," she said, matching his brisk pace. "And Governor Richter's office called again about the fundraiser. Tell them I'll donate double if I don't have to attend," Ethan replied. As they rounded the corner toward the conference room, his phone rang. The hospital security chief. "This better be important, Daniels. Sir, we have a situation at the main entrance. A child is asking for you personally. Says she won't leave until she speaks with you." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And this requires my attention because—" "She's been here 3 hours, sir. She appears unwell, possibly feverish. We've offered medical assistance, but she refuses to see anyone but you. Remove her. Call social services if necessary." "Sir, she has your name. The hospital name, I mean." She specifically asked for Ethan Walker of Walker Medical Center. Journalists occasionally sent plants to dig for dirt on America's most eligible bachelor billionaire. Competitors tried corporate espionage. This seemed amateur, even for them. "I'll handle it after the board meeting." "Sir, she's just a kid, maybe 10 years old. Seems pretty sick." Ethan paused, surprising himself. "Fine. Security cameras?" "Yes, sir. I can stream to your phone." The video loaded. A small figure huddled on a bench near the entrance, shivering despite the warm September morning. Dark hair fell over a pale face as she clutched something to her chest. "Have Dr. Reeves check her out. I'll be down after my meeting." 2 hours later, quarterly projections delivered and acquisition strategy approved. Ethan took the elevator to the ground floor. He'd nearly forgotten about the child until his assistant reminded him. "Sir, security says the girl is still waiting." Annoyance flickered across his face. "Fine. He found her exactly where the security feed had shown, small, hunched and trembling. A security guard stood nearby, looking uncomfortable. When Ethan approached, the girl looked up. Her eyes, despite the glassy sheen of fever, were startling, intelligent and determined. "Are you Mr. Walker?" Her voice was raspy but steady. "I am. I understand you've been asking for me." She nodded, then coughed, a harsh, rattling sound that seemed too big for her thin frame. "You should be in a hospital bed," Ethan said, gesturing to the guard. "Get a wheelchair." "No," she said, surprising him with her firmness. "I need to talk to you first." "I promised." She was clearly ill, cheeks flushed, hair damp with sweat, but something in her composure gave him pause. "What's your name?" "Lily. Lily Harmon." The name meant nothing to him. "How do you know who I am?" She held out a crumpled envelope. "My grandmother told me to find you if something happened to her. She said you'd help." Ethan took the envelope cautiously. Inside was a collection of small bills and coins, perhaps $40 in total, and a folded letter on faded blue stationery. "Your grandmother is Margaret Harmon." The girl's eyes searched his face for recognition. The name hit Ethan like a physical blow. Images flooded back, warm cookies after school, gentle hands bandaging scraped knees, a soft voice reading stories when nightmares came. Margaret, his childhood housekeeper, the woman who'd raised him after his parents died, until his grandfather shipped him off to boarding school at 12. "Margaret," he repeated, the name unfamiliar on his lips after so many years. Lily nodded. "She's sick, really sick. They took her to county hospital this morning when she couldn't get out of bed." Her voice cracked. "I promised I'd find you." Ethan unfolded the letter, recognizing the handwriting immediately. "Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm no longer able to care for Lily. I've told her so many stories about the bright little boy I once knew, with a heart bigger than his circumstances. I pray that boy still exists somewhere inside the man you've become. Lily is all I have in this world. Her parents, my son and his wife, died in a car accident 3 years ago. She has no one else. I'm not asking for myself, but for her. She's special, Ethan, smart, kind, and braver than anyone should need to be at her age. She reminds me of you sometimes. If you can find it in your heart to help her, even in some small way, I would be eternally grateful. With love and hope, Margaret." Ethan folded the letter carefully, his expression unreadable. Margaret had been the only person who'd shown him unconditional kindness during the darkest time of his life. After his grandfather sent him away, he'd never seen her again. His life became a series of prestigious institutions, Exeter, then Harvard, then Wharton, each further removing him from the boy who'd once found comfort in Margaret's kitchen. He looked at Lily, seeing her clearly for the first time, the determined set of her jaw, the intelligence behind her fever-bright eyes. "Where have you been staying while your grandmother is in the hospital?" "Our apartment. I have a key." "Alone?" Something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. Concern, perhaps. She shrugged. "I'm 10. I can take care of myself." The words were undermined by another racking cough. Ethan made a decision that would alter the course of his precisely ordered life. "Not anymore." He turned to the security guard. "Call Dr. Reeves. Have him prepare a private room." To his assistant, who had materialized silently beside him, "Cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. Then contact County Hospital. I want Margaret Harmon transferred here immediately with a full medical team." Lily's eyes widened. "Really? You're going to help us?" For the first time in years, Ethan felt the rigid control of his life shift. "Yes," he said simply, "I am." As he guided the child toward the elevator, memory and present collided. The boy he'd been and the man he'd become stood at a crossroads, with a small, feverish girl pointing toward a path he'd long forgotten existed. Dr. Reeves's assessment was swift and concerning. "Severe bronchitis, bordering on pneumonia," he informed Ethan outside Lily's hospital room. "She's dehydrated and exhausted. Has she been caring for herself?" Ethan glanced through the observation window at the small figure in the oversized hospital bed. Apparently. Well, she needs rest, antibiotics, and monitoring. I've started treatment, but she should stay at least 48 hours. Whatever she needs, Ethan replied, his tone brooking no argument. Inside the room, Lily's fierce independence had momentarily succumbed to medical necessity. She looked smaller against the white sheets, dark hair splayed across the pillow. When Ethan entered, her eyes fluttered open. "Mr. Walker." Her voice was weaker now, the fight temporarily drained. "Call me Ethan," he said, surprising himself. "How are you feeling?" "Tired." She glanced at the IV in her arm. "Is my grandmother coming here?" "Yes. They're bringing her now." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you." The simple gratitude felt unfamiliar to Ethan, who was accustomed to transactions rather than genuine thanks. "You should rest," he said, awkward in this unfamiliar territory of caretaking. "Will you stay? Just until I fall asleep?" The vulnerability in her request caught him off guard. Ethan checked his watch. 3 board calls, a video conference with Tokyo, and 47 unread emails awaited his attention. "Of course," he heard himself say. He lowered himself into the chair beside her bed, expecting to feel impatience. Instead, as Lily's breathing steadied into sleep, he found himself studying her face, the stubborn set of her jaw, even in repose, the slight furrow between her brows. She looked nothing like him, yet Margaret's letter echoed in his mind. "She reminds me of you sometimes." His phone vibrated. "Walker," he answered quietly, moving toward the window. "Sir, Ms. Harmon has arrived from County Hospital. Dr. Levinson is assessing her now in the East Wing. I'll be right there." He cast a final glance at Lily before stepping out. In the hallway, his executive assistant waited, looking uncharacteristically hesitant. "What is it, Claire?" "Sir, I've cleared your schedule as requested, but the Singapore investors are insisting on meeting with you personally before signing. They've flown in specifically." "Reschedule them." Claire blinked. In 15 years, she'd never heard those words from Ethan. "Walker." "Sir, they've made it clear this is their final courtesy before taking their capital elsewhere." Ethan paused, the businessman in him calculating the 9-figure loss this would represent. Then, unbidden, the image of Lily's determined face as she'd waited hours for him rose in his mind. "Tell them I've had a family emergency." The words felt strange in his mouth. "Offer them exclusive first rights on the new cancer drug patents if they'll meet next week instead." "The family emergency," Claire repeated carefully, making notes. "Yes, sir." The East Wing of Walker Medical Center housed the private suites reserved for dignitaries and the ultra-wealthy. Ethan found Dr. Levinson outside one of these rooms, reviewing charts. "Margaret Harmon," Ethan said without preamble. Levinson nodded gravely. "Advanced pancreatic cancer, Mr. Walker. Stage 4, metastasized to the liver. County had her on basic palliative care, but they weren't equipped for much else. And now that she's here, we can make her comfortable, manage her pain more effectively. There are experimental treatments we could try, but honestly, at her age and stage..." He trailed off, meeting Ethan's steely gaze. "We're looking at weeks, possibly months with aggressive intervention." Ethan absorbed this with an outward calm that belied the unexpected turmoil beneath. "Does she know?" "Yes, she's remarkably clear-headed about her prognosis." "Is she awake?" "Yes, but..." Before Levinson could finish, Ethan was moving past him into the room. Margaret Harmon lay propped against pillows, diminished yet dignified. At 78, her once dark hair had silvered completely, and her skin had the translucent quality of the elderly. But her eyes, warm, brown, and kind, were exactly as Ethan remembered. Those eyes widened as he entered. "Ethan, my goodness, you found Lily." "She found me," he corrected, moving to her bedside. "She's here too in the children's wing. Bronchitis." Margaret closed her eyes briefly. "Thank God. I've been so worried. When the ambulance came, she promised she'd be all right, but..." She reached for his hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "Thank you for helping her." Ethan struggled to reconcile this frail woman with the sturdy, capable figure from his childhood. "Why didn't you contact me sooner, Margaret?" A small smile played across her lips. "Would you have answered? The boy I knew disappeared a long time ago. The man I see in the business papers on the news. He's a stranger who seemed very busy with important things." The gentle rebuke stung more than any boardroom confrontation. "I would have helped you. Perhaps." Her expression softened. "But it doesn't matter now. You're here when it counts most." Ethan sat beside her, unaccustomed to the emotions churning within him. "Dr. Levinson told me about your diagnosis." Margaret nodded. "I've known for some time. I thought I had a few more months to figure things out for Lily." Worry creased her brow. "She has no one else, Ethan. My son was her only family, and after the accident," she gripped his hand tighter, "I don't know what will happen to her." Before Ethan could respond, a nurse appeared at the door. "Mr. Walker, the child is asking for her grandmother. She's quite insistent." Margaret attempted to sit up straighter. "I need to see her." "You shouldn't be moved right now," Ethan said firmly, then turned to the nurse. "Prepare a wheelchair for Ms. Harmon. We'll bring her to Lily." The reunion between grandmother and granddaughter transformed both their faces. Despite their respective illnesses, they brightened in each other's presence. Ethan stood back, witnessing their easy affection with the detached fascination of an anthropologist observing an unfamiliar culture. "You actually found him," Margaret said, stroking Lily's hair. "I told you I would." Lily's eyes darted to Ethan. "He's helping us, just like you said he might." "Ethan was always special," Margaret said, her gaze also turning to him, "even when he pretended not to be." The comment left Ethan uncharacteristically speechless. He retreated to the window, allowing them their moment while his mind raced. His carefully structured world had been upended in a matter of hours. Responsibilities he'd never contemplated now loomed before him. As if reading his thoughts, Margaret called softly, "Ethan?" He turned. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Lily frowned. "Are you going to talk about me?" "Just boring, grown-up things," Margaret assured her. "Why don't you show Mr. Walker the drawing you were working on?" The distraction worked. Lily reached for a battered sketchbook in her backpack, while Ethan stepped closer to Margaret's wheelchair. "You don't have to worry about the medical expenses," he said quietly. "I'll take care of everything." Margaret's expression was gentle but determined. "That's very generous, but it's not what I need to ask you." She glanced at Lily, then back to him. "I need to know what will happen to her, Ethan, after I'm gone." The question hit with the force of a physical blow. "Margaret, I'm not asking you to adopt her," she continued, her voice low and urgent, "but she'll need someone to make decisions until a permanent arrangement can be made, someone I trust." Ethan stared at her, momentarily at a loss. "There must be someone more suitable. I run companies, I don't know anything about children." "You know more than you think," Margaret replied. "And you have resources others don't. Please, Ethan, just think about it, for me." Before he could answer, Lily appeared at his elbow, holding out her sketchbook. "This is my school," she explained, pointing to a detailed drawing of a brick building. "And these are the gardens I designed for the science fair." The page showed elaborate plans for raised beds and irrigation systems. "You did this yourself?" Ethan asked, genuinely impressed by the technical precision. She nodded. "I won first place. Grandma says I might be an engineer someday." "I'd say that's a strong possibility," he agreed, examining the mathematical notations in the margins. Margaret's eyes met his over Lily's head, a silent plea in them. The moment was interrupted by Dr. Reeves. "I'm sorry, but both my patients need their rest now." He glanced meaningfully at the monitors displaying Lily's vital signs. As the nurse prepared to wheel Margaret back to her room, she caught Ethan's hand once more. "Promise you'll think about what I asked." He nodded, unable to refuse her. "I promise." Later that evening, Ethan sat in his penthouse office above the Manhattan skyline, the city lights blurring as he stared unseeing through the wall of windows. On his desk lay Margaret's letter and a preliminary report from his legal team on temporary guardianship procedures. His phone rang. Claire, calling with the daily wrap-up. "Singapore is confirmed for next Tuesday," she began. "Powell wants to discuss the Boston acquisition before the weekend, and your dinner with Senator Mitchell is scheduled for Thursday at 7. The familiar rhythms of his life continued, yet they suddenly seemed hollow against the weight of Margaret's request. After 30 years of singular focus on building his empire, could he really consider taking responsibility for a child? "Sir, is there anything else you need tonight?" Ethan's gaze fell on a framed photograph he'd almost forgotten. His younger self, perhaps 9 years old, proudly holding a science fair ribbon. And standing beside him, one hand on his shoulder, was Margaret, beaming with pride that his own grandfather had never shown. "Sir, have the guest rooms prepared at my apartment," he said suddenly, "and find out what 10-year-old girls need, clothes, books, whatever." A slight pause. "For Ms. Harmon's granddaughter, sir?" "Yes, she'll be staying with me when she's released from the hospital." "I see." To Claire's credit, her voice betrayed no surprise. "I'll make the arrangements." As he ended the call, Ethan realized he'd made his decision. For how long, he wasn't certain. But for now, at least, he would step into the unfamiliar territory of responsibility for another human being. A debt repaid to the woman who had once cared for him when no one else would. The first thing Ethan noticed about his Fifth Avenue penthouse was the silence. He'd always appreciated the hushed perfection of his home, minimalist, pristine, and utterly still after the door closed behind him. Now, as he led Lily through the marble foyer, that same silence felt oppressive. "This is where you live?" Lily asked, her voice small in the cavernous space. Still pale from her hospital stay, she clutched her battered backpack against her chest like armor. "Yes." Ethan watched her take in the stark white walls, angular furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Manhattan skyline. "It looks like a museum," she observed. "Are we allowed to touch things?" The question caught him off guard. "Of course." She nodded solemnly, but made no move to set down her backpack. "Your room is this way," he said, leading her down a hallway lined with expensive but emotionally vacant artwork, selected by his interior designer to complete the aesthetic. The guest room had been hastily transformed by Claire's efficient team. Gone were the minimalist furnishings, replaced by a bed with actual colors, a desk, and bookshelves stocked with titles appropriate for a 10-year-old girl. The effect was jarring against the rest of the apartment's monochrome palette, like a tropical bird in a penguin colony. "This is all for me?" Lily asked, eyes wide. "Yes. If you need anything else, we can get it tomorrow." She approached the bookshelves cautiously, running a finger along the spines. "I've read some of these. Grandma and I go to the library every Saturday. Or we used to." The mention of Margaret sobered them both. Lily had been released from the hospital that morning, but Margaret remained, her condition requiring constant monitoring. "We'll visit her tomorrow," Ethan promised. "Dr. Levinson says she's comfortable." Lily nodded, but her eyes filled with tears she stubbornly refused to shed. "I know she's really sick." Ethan found himself at a loss. Boardroom negotiations and hostile takeovers hadn't prepared him for comforting a child facing the impending loss of her only family. He opted for honesty. "Yes, she is, but she's getting the best care possible, and she's not in pain." Lily placed her backpack on the bed, finally relaxing her grip on it. "She told me she might have to go to heaven soon, like my mum and dad did." She looked up at him, her gaze direct despite her watery eyes. "Are you really going to take care of me when she does?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither fully comprehended. In the hospital, Ethan had signed temporary guardianship papers, a stopgap measure that Margaret's social worker had facilitated with surprising speed. "Yes," he said simply. "For now, at least." She studied him with that disconcertingly adult gaze. "You don't know anything about taking care of kids, do you?" Despite everything, Ethan found himself smiling slightly. "Is it that obvious?" "Kind of." She shrugged. It's okay. I'm pretty good at taking care of myself. The statement delivered, with such matter-of-fact acceptance, struck Ethan harder than he expected. This child had already lost her parents and was now watching her grandmother slip away. Yet here she stood, offering to make things easier for him. Tell you what, he said, we'll figure it out together. Her smile was brief but genuine. Deal. That evening revealed the first of many practical challenges. Ethan's refrigerator contained nothing but protein shakes, cold brew coffee, and an expensive bottle of champagne. His personal chef prepared meals twice weekly, but today wasn't one of those days. Do you like sushi? He asked, reaching for his phone to order delivery. Lily wrinkled her nose. Raw fish? Gross. Pizza then? Her face brightened. With pepperoni? One phone call later, they sat at Ethan's sleek dining table, rarely used as he typically ate at his desk, sharing what was possibly the first genuinely casual meal that space had ever witnessed. Do you always work this much? Lily asked, watching him check emails between bites. Ethan glanced up, suddenly conscious of his behavior. Usually. Don't you have friends to hang out with? Or hobbies? The questions were innocent, but penetrating. My work is important. Grandma says everybody needs a balance. All work makes Jack a boring boy. She tilted her head. Are you boring, Mr. Walker? Ethan, he corrected automatically. And I don't think so, but perhaps that's not for me to judge. What do you do for fun? He considered this longer than should have been necessary. I sail sometimes. The 40-foot yacht he kept at the marina saw use perhaps 3 times a year. Anything else? I read business journals and market analyses primarily. What's your favorite book? Ethan was saved from this unexpectedly difficult question by his phone. Excuse me, he said, stepping away to take the call. It was Dr. Levinson. Mr. Walker, Ms. Harmon is asking to see you, both of you actually. Is something wrong? No immediate change, but she's having a good evening. Alert, relatively comfortable. These moments are precious now. Ethan glanced at his watch, 7:30 p.m. We'll be there in 30 minutes. When he returned to the table, Lily was collecting their plates. You don't have to do that, he said. Grandma says always clean up after yourself. She carried the dishes to the kitchen with practiced ease. Was that about her? I heard you mention we. Yes, she'd like to see us. Lily was already heading toward the door, pizza forgotten. Let's go. At the hospital, Margaret was propped up in bed, oxygen tubes in her nose, but her eyes bright. The harsh, fluorescent lighting couldn't diminish the joy that transformed her face when Lily rushed to her side. There's my girl, she said, embracing her granddaughter. How was your first day with Mr. Walker? He has the biggest apartment ever, but nothing in his refrigerator, Lily reported. And he works all the time. Margaret's eyes met Ethan's over Lily's head, a mixture of amusement and concern in them. Some things never change, I see. I'm learning, Ethan defended himself. We had pizza, with pepperoni, Lily added. Well, that's a start. Margaret patted the edge of her bed. Ethan, would you sit with me a moment while Lily shows the nurses her drawings? They've been asking to see them. Once Lily had been escorted to the nurses' station, Margaret turned to Ethan, her expression serious. How are you really doing with all this? The question was so unexpected that Ethan answered honestly. I'm completely out of my depth. She nodded. I thought you might be. That's why I asked to see you. She reached for a small book on her bedside table. I've kept notes over the years. Lily's favorite foods, her allergies. She can't have strawberries, they give her hives. Her school schedule, the names of her friends, the little things that matter. Ethan accepted the book, strangely moved by this practical expression of love. Thank you. There's something else. Margaret's voice grew softer. Legal papers in my apartment. I've named you as her guardian in my will. Ethan stared at her. Margaret, we've discussed temporary arrangements, but permanent guardianship is an enormous responsibility, I know. Her eyes were steady on his. But I've thought about this a long time, Ethan. There's no one else I trust more with her future. I'm not father material. I work 16-hour days. I know nothing about raising a child. You knew nothing about running a billion-dollar company once, but you learned. She reached for his hand. I'm not asking you to become her father. I'm asking you to give her safety, opportunities, and enough care to let her become who she's meant to be. And if I fail her, you won't. The certainty in Margaret's voice was humbling. The boy I knew had such capacity for kindness, for connection. That doesn't disappear, Ethan, even when we bury it deep. Before he could respond, Lily returned, proudly reporting that the nurses had loved her drawings. The moment for further discussion had passed. As they prepared to leave, Margaret clasped Lily's hands. Be good for Mr. Walker, sweetheart. Remember, he's new at this. I will, Lily promised solemnly. I'll even teach him how to make proper breakfast. He doesn't know that protein shakes aren't real food. Margaret's laughter, though weakened by illness, filled the room with warmth. That's my practical girl. In the taxi back to the penthouse, Lily was unusually quiet, staring out at the city lights. She seems better today, she finally said, a question in her voice. Ethan considered his words carefully. Sometimes people have good days even when they're very ill. It doesn't necessarily mean they're getting better. Lily nodded, processing this. I know she's going to die soon. I'm not a baby. No, you're not, Ethan agreed, impressed by her directness. When my parents died, it happened really fast. The police came, and then Grandma was crying, and then we were at a funeral. Her voice remained steady, but her hands twisted in her lap. This is slower, harder to watch. Ethan had no ready corporate platitudes for this situation. I'm sorry, Lily. She turned to face him fully. Are you really going to be my guardian? For real, not just for now? Your grandmother has asked me to be, yes. But what do you want? The question stopped him cold. What did he want? His life had been a relentless march toward more success, more power, more control. A child had never factored into that equation. Yet sitting beside him was a remarkably self-possessed little girl who had already endured more loss than most adults. In her direct gaze, he saw an echo of himself at that age, determined to be strong, to need no one, to survive. I want, he said slowly, to honor your grandmother's wishes and to make sure you're taken care of properly. She considered this. That's not really answering my question. No, it's not, he admitted. The truth is, I don't know yet. This isn't something I ever planned for, Lily. Me neither, she said simply. I didn't plan for my parents to die or for Grandma to get sick, but here we are. The adult wisdom in her childish voice struck him deeply. Yes, here we are. When they arrived at the penthouse, Lily went straight to her room, emerging minutes later in pajamas covered with mathematical symbols. Grandma got these for me when I won the science fair, she explained. The numbers are the Fibonacci sequence. Very appropriate, Ethan noted, recognizing the pattern. Do you have work to do now? She asked. He glanced at his home office, where his laptop waited with dozens of unread emails. It can wait until tomorrow. She brightened. Want to see more of my drawings? 20 minutes later, Ethan found himself sitting on the floor of Lily's room, surrounded by sketches of buildings, gardens, and elaborate tree houses, all rendered with surprising technical skill for a child her age. This one's my favorite, she said, holding up a detailed plan for a hospital garden. I designed it for Grandma when she started getting sick. I thought plants and fresh air might help her feel better. Ethan studied the drawing. This is remarkable, Lily. Have you shown this to anyone? She shook her head. Just Grandma. Would you like to show it to the hospital architects? Walker Medical is planning a new pediatric wing. Something like this could be incorporated. Her eyes widened. Really? They might actually build it. It would need some professional refinement, but the concept is sound. He meant it. The design showed intuitive understanding of both aesthetics and function. For the first time since he'd met her, Lily's face lit up with genuine excitement. That would be amazing. Grandma always said my drawings shouldn't just stay in my notebook. When Ethan finally left her room, Lily was already asleep, her sketchbook open beside her. He stood in the doorway, watching the rise and fall of her chest, struck by how quickly responsibility for another human being had grown from abstract concept to flesh and blood reality. In his office, he bypassed his laptop and instead opened Margaret's notebook. Inside were pages of carefully documented details. Lily's afraid of thunderstorms, but won't admit it. Keep her talking and she'll forget to be scared. She needs reminding to brush her teeth properly, back molars especially. When she's upset, she pretends to be fine, but watch her hands. If she's twisting them, she needs comfort. The intimate knowledge of a child's needs and habits, catalogued with love by the woman who'd once shown the same care to him. Ethan closed the book, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was contemplating. Could he possibly live up to Margaret's faith in him? Could the isolated, driven man he'd become make room in his life for a child's needs? As if in answer, his phone vibrated with an email notification. The hospital architect, responding to his earlier message about Lily's garden design, Mr. Walker. Intriguing concept from your young protege. We'd be delighted to review her ideas. Perhaps a meeting next week? Ethan found himself smiling as he typed his response, already imagining Lily's reaction to this validation of her talent. Perhaps, he thought, they could indeed figure this out together. Mr. Walker, the Nakamura presentation starts in 15 minutes. Ethan glanced up from his desk, where he'd been reviewing quarterly projections. I'll be right there, Claire. And, his assistant hesitated. Ms. Clayton from Lily's school called again. Apparently there's a parent-teacher conference this afternoon that wasn't on her previous calendar. Ethan checked his watch. 10:30 a.m. What time? 3 o'clock. She was quite insistent about your attendance. 2 weeks into his guardianship of Lily, Ethan was discovering that the meticulously organized systems that governed his corporate empire were woefully inadequate for managing the chaotic rhythms of a child's life. School events materialized with maddening irregularity. Meals needed to happen at specific times, and bedtime, a concept previously irrelevant to a man who worked until exhaustion, was now a nightly negotiation. The Nakamura deal is critical, he said, more to himself than Claire, but so is this meeting. He made a quick calculation. Tell Jacob to handle the first half of the presentation. I'll join for the technical specifications and closing. Claire nodded, hiding her surprise at this unprecedented delegation. I'll arrange a car to take you directly to the school afterward. Thank you. Ethan gathered his materials, then paused. Has Lily's lunch order been delivered to the school? Yes, sir. And I've added Ms. Clayton's contact information to your priority list, as requested. These small adaptations to accommodate Lily's presence had been multiplying daily. His, once, streamlined life now included considerations he'd never imagined, from school lunch preferences to the discovery that his guest bathroom lacked a stepping stool for a child to reach the sink. The Nakamura presentation proceeded smoothly, though Ethan found his thoughts drifting periodically to the afternoon's conference. Margaret's notebook had mentioned that Lily sometimes struggled with transitions, and the move to his penthouse, combined with her grandmother's hospitalization, certainly qualified as a significant transition. At precisely 2:55 p.m., Ethan arrived at the Manhattan Preparatory Academy, an exclusive private school where he'd arranged Lily's transfer. The security guard recognized him immediately. Not surprising, given that the science building bore the Walker name following a substantial donation. Mr. Walker, we weren't expecting you today. Parent-teacher conference, Ethan explained, feeling the strangeness of the words. The guard nodded. Ms. Clayton's classroom is in the East Wing, 2nd floor. As Ethan navigated the quiet hallways, he reflected on Lily's first days at the new school. She'd been stoic about the change, her primary concern being whether she could continue her science fair project. When he'd assured her that Manhattan Prep had an even more advanced program, she'd simply nodded and asked practical questions about the uniform requirements. He found Lily waiting outside Ms. Clayton's classroom, swinging her legs as she sat on a bench, her dark hair neatly braided. the work of his housekeeper, who had unexpectedly revealed a talent for hair styling. "You came," Lily said, sounding surprised despite his assurances that morning. "Of course." He straightened his tie, a gesture of nervous habit rather than necessity. "Is everything all right?" "I'm not in trouble," she said quickly. "Ms. Clayton just wants to talk about my project and some other stuff." Before he could inquire further, the classroom door opened, revealing a woman in her early 30s with bright eyes and a welcoming smile. "Mr. Walker, I'm Jessica Clayton. Thank you for coming." The classroom was a stark contrast to the corporate boardrooms Ethan frequented. Colorful displays of student work adorned the walls, and desks were arranged in collaborative clusters rather than hierarchical rows. "Lily, would you mind waiting outside for a few minutes?" Ms. Clayton asked. "I'd like to speak with your guardian first." Once they were alone, the teacher's expression grew more serious. "First, I want to say that Lily is a remarkable child. Her academic abilities are exceptional, particularly in mathematics and science." Ethan nodded, unsurprised. "Yes, I've seen her designs. They show considerable talent." "They do indeed. In fact, she's performing at least 2 grade levels above her age in those subjects." Ms. Clayton folded her hands. "However, I'm concerned about her emotional well-being. She's very withdrawn with the other children, and when I assigned group projects, she asked to work alone." "She's going through a difficult time," Ethan said, feeling defensive on Lily's behalf. "Her grandmother is terminally ill, and she's adjusting to a completely new living situation." "I understand that," Ms. Clayton said gently. "And I'm not criticizing your guardianship, Mr. Walker. But children need more than academic support, especially during times of transition." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "What are you suggesting?" "2 things. First, Lily needs opportunities for social interaction with peers, structured activities where she can build relationships gradually, on her terms." She slid a brochure across the desk. "Our after-school STEM club might be perfect. Small group, project-based learning in her area of interest." Ethan glanced at the brochure. "And the second thing? More consistent routines at home." Her expression was kind but direct. "Lily mentioned that sometimes you work very late and your housekeeper puts her to bed. While that's understandable occasionally, children thrive on predictability, especially when other aspects of life are changing." The critique, though diplomatically delivered, stung. Ethan had been making what felt like monumental adjustments to his schedule, yet it still wasn't enough. "I see," he said stiffly. "I'll make the necessary arrangements." Ms. Clayton's expression softened. "Mr. Walker, if I may speak candidly, what you're doing for Lily is admirable. Taking guardianship of a child, particularly under such circumstances, is no small undertaking. There's no perfect way to do this. We're all just trying our best." The unexpected kindness caught him off guard. In the corporate world, vulnerability was exploited, not accommodated. "Thank you," he said simply. "I'm learning as I go, as are we all." She smiled. "Shall we bring Lily in to discuss her science project? I think you'll be impressed by her proposal." The subsequent conversation was indeed impressive, with Lily outlining a sophisticated study on urban garden ecology that would have been ambitious for a high school student, let alone a 5th grader. Ms. Clayton had wisely connected her with a 7th grade science mentor, an arrangement that seemed to please Lily enormously. As they left the school, Ethan found himself evaluating the meeting with the same analytical precision he applied to business negotiations. Action items: establish more consistent evening routines, enroll Lily in STEM club, investigate weekend social opportunities. "Can we visit Grandma now?" Lily asked as they settled into the back of the town car. "Yes, we're heading there now." Ethan studied her expression, searching for signs of the social withdrawal Ms. Clayton had described. "Lily, would you be interested in joining the after-school science club Ms. Clayton mentioned?" She shrugged, tracing patterns on the leather seat. "Maybe. Do I have to?" "No, but it might be enjoyable. You'd meet other students who share your interests. I guess. Her lack of enthusiasm was telling. Is there a reason you don't want to? Lily was quiet for a long moment. The other kids think I'm weird because I like math and designing things instead of whatever they like. The admission struck a chord of recognition in Ethan. How many times had he felt the same alienation as a child? Too serious, too focused, too different from his peers. Being different isn't bad, he said carefully. Sometimes it means you see possibilities others don't. That's what Grandma always says. Lily looked up at him. She says being myself is more important than being like everyone else. Your grandmother is a wise woman. She also says that even unique people need friends sometimes. A small smile tugged at her lips. Maybe I'll try the club. Just once. At Walker Medical Center, they found Margaret asleep. Her breathing labored despite the oxygen support. Dr. Levinson met them in the hallway, his expression grave. She's declining more rapidly than we anticipated, he said quietly, steering Ethan a few steps away from Lily. The cancer has spread to her lungs. We're making her comfortable, but he glanced at Lily, who was setting up her sketchbook by her grandmother's bedside. It's a matter of days now, not weeks. Ethan absorbed this with outward composure. She's not in pain. No, the medication is managing that effectively. Should we... Ethan struggled for the right words. Should we prepare Lily? Dr. Levinson nodded. Children often understand more than we give them credit for. Simple, honest explanations are best. Inside the room, Lily was showing her sleeping grandmother her latest sketch, an elaborate garden design incorporating hospital walkways and patient seating areas. See, Grandma, the architects at Mr. Walker's hospital said they might actually build this. Not exactly like this, but pretty close. Margaret's eyes fluttered open. That's wonderful, sweetheart, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I always told you, your drawings would change the world someday. Lily beamed, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Mr. Walker said I can present it to the committee myself next week. So proud. Margaret's gaze shifted to Ethan, standing awkwardly in the doorway. Come closer, both of you. They gathered at her bedside, Lily taking her grandmother's frail hand. I need to tell you something important, Margaret said, each word a visible effort. Lily, my darling girl, I'll be going to heaven very soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. Now Lily's face crumpled, though she made a valiant effort to control her expression. But the doctors have done everything they can, Margaret said gently. And now, it's time for me to rest. I don't want you to go, Lily whispered, the composure she'd maintained for weeks finally breaking. Please, Grandma. I know, sweetheart. Margaret stroked her hair weakly. But you'll be all right. You're the bravest person I know. She beckoned Ethan closer. And you won't be alone. Ethan will take care of you now. Ethan found his throat unexpectedly tight. Margaret, no arguments, she said, with a flash of her old firmness. You've already shown me the man I always knew you could be. Her voice softened. Just promise me one thing. Anything. Let her teach you how to live, not just how to work. Her gaze was knowing. You need her as much as she needs you. The statement was so unexpected, so contrary to everything Ethan had believed about his carefully constructed independence, that he could only nod mutely. Margaret drew Lily into a gentle embrace. I love you more than all the stars in the sky, my sweet girl. I'll always be watching over you. I love you too, Grandma, Lily sobbed, abandoning all pretense of stoicism. And Ethan, Margaret added, her voice growing fainter. Thank you for remembering the boy you were. It was past midnight when they finally left the hospital. Lily had fallen asleep in the chair beside her grandmother's bed, and Ethan had carried her to the car, where she'd remained asleep against his shoulder. Now, as he awkwardly navigated the penthouse hallway with her dead weight in his arms, he realized he'd never actually put a child to bed before. In her room, he managed to settle her on the bed, but removing her shoes presented a logistical challenge he hadn't anticipated. Should he wake her? Leave them on? the mundane parental decisions that had never crossed his mind until now. He opted to slip them off carefully, then pulled the blanket over her still-clothed form. She stirred briefly, mumbling something about her sketchbook. "It's right here," he assured her, placing it on the nightstand. "Go back to sleep." "Is Grandma gone?" she asked groggily. "No, not yet. She's resting." Lily nodded, already drifting back to sleep. "She said you'd take care of me." "I will," Ethan promised, surprised by the certainty in his voice. "And I'll take care of you too," she murmured, her words slurring as sleep reclaimed her. "Grandma said we both need someone." Ethan stood in the doorway, watching her chest rise and fall with the deep breaths of childhood sleep. Margaret's words echoed in his mind. "You need her as much as she needs you." Could it be true? Had his relentless pursuit of success and control been, at its core, an attempt to fill the void left by the absence of real human connection? His phone vibrated. A text from Dr. Levinson. "Ms. Harmon asking for Lily again. She's lucid, but weakening. Consider bringing the child in early tomorrow." Ethan stared at the message, reality settling cold and heavy in his chest. Tomorrow might be the day Lily lost the last of her family. And somehow, impossibly, he was now the person responsible for guiding her through that loss. He texted back a brief acknowledgement, then moved to his home office, where the red light of his laptop blinked with dozens of unread messages. For the first time in his adult life, Ethan Walker left them unattended, silencing his phone as he sank into a chair. Tomorrow would require strength he wasn't sure he possessed. Tonight, he needed to prepare, not with spreadsheets or strategic planning, but with the emotional resources to support a child facing unimaginable loss, resources he himself had never developed. As dawn broke over the Manhattan skyline, Ethan made a decision. He called Claire. "I need you to clear my schedule for the foreseeable future," he said without preamble. "Family emergency." "Yes, sir." "For how long should I reschedule?" Ethan watched the sunrise paint the city gold, thinking of the small girl asleep down the hall and the difficult days ahead. "I don't know," he admitted. "As long as it takes." The call came at 4:47 a.m. 3 days later. Ethan, sleeping fitfully on the couch to remain within earshot of Lily's room, answered on the first ring. "Mr. Walker, this is night nursing at Walker Medical." The voice was gentle but direct. "I'm afraid, Ms. Harmon has taken a significant turn. The doctor suggests you might want to come now." "We'll be right there," Ethan said, already moving toward Lily's room. He found her curled into a tight ball beneath her blankets, as if physically protecting herself from the losses she'd already endured and the one that loomed ahead. Waking her felt like an act of cruelty, yet he knew Margaret's time was running out. "Lily," he said softly, touching her shoulder, "we need to go to the hospital." She woke instantly, her eyes finding his with immediate understanding. "Is Grandma dying now?" The directness of the question caught in his chest. "Yes, I think she is." Lily nodded once, then slid from bed, already reaching for her shoes. "I need my sketchbook and the card I made yesterday." The calm efficiency with which she prepared herself spoke volumes about the resilience she'd developed through previous losses. Within 5 minutes, she stood ready at the door, her backpack clutched in white-knuckled hands. "It's okay to be scared," Ethan said gently as they rode the elevator down. "I'm not scared," she replied, though her voice wavered. "I'm sad. There's a difference." The pre-dawn streets were nearly empty as their car sped toward the hospital. Lily stared out the window, her breath fogging the glass. "What happens after someone dies?" she asked suddenly. "Not the heaven part, the other part." Ethan considered his answer carefully. "There are practical matters. Funeral arrangements, legal paperwork. Is that what you're asking about?" She shook her head. "No, I mean for the people left behind. What happens to them?" The question struck at the heart of what Ethan had been avoiding confronting himself. "They grieve," he said honestly. "They miss the person who's gone. But eventually, they learn to carry that loss while still moving forward." Did you? After your parents died? The directness stunned him. He'd never discussed his parents' death with anyone, not in all the intervening years. I don't know if I did it properly, he admitted. I shut down my feelings rather than face them. Lily nodded thoughtfully. That doesn't sound very healthy. Despite everything, Ethan found himself smiling slightly. No, I suppose it wasn't. At the hospital, Dr. Levinson met them outside Margaret's room. She's been asking for you both, he said quietly. She's conscious but very weak. It won't be long now. Lily squared her small shoulders. Can I go in first? Just for a minute? Ethan exchanged glances with the doctor, who nodded. Of course. Through the observation window, they watched as Lily approached her grandmother's bed with solemn dignity. She placed her handmade card on the bedside table, then leaned in close, speaking words they couldn't hear. After a moment, she took Margaret's hand and pressed it to her cheek. She's saying goodbye, Dr. Levinson murmured. Children often sense what needs to be done, even without being told. When Lily finally beckoned Ethan in, her eyes were red but dry. Grandma wants to talk to you now, she said, her voice small but steady. Margaret's breathing was labored, her skin ashen against the white pillows, but her eyes were clear and focused. Ethan, she whispered as he approached. Thank you for bringing her. Of course. He took the chair beside her bed, awkward in the face of imminent death. I need to know, she said, each word requiring visible effort, that you're certain. About Lily. Ethan glanced at the child, who had retreated to the window, giving them privacy while remaining protectively close. I am, he said, surprising himself with the truth of it. I'll take care of her, Margaret. You have my word. Relief softened her features. She'll take care of you too, you know, if you let her. So I've been told, he said, thinking of Lily's drowsy words days earlier. Margaret's hand found his, her grip surprisingly firm. You were always meant for more than just success, Ethan. You were meant for joy. The words pierced through defenses he'd spent decades constructing. I don't know if I remember how, he confessed quietly. You will. Her gaze drifted to Lily. She'll remind you. Margaret's breathing became more labored. Dr. Levinson stepped in to adjust her oxygen, exchanging a meaningful look with Ethan. Lily, Ethan called softly. Come sit with your grandmother now. Together, they kept vigil as the dawn light gradually filled the room. Lily held Margaret's hand, occasionally sharing memories in a quiet voice. The time they'd baked cookies for the entire apartment building during a power outage, the community garden they'd helped start, the bedtime stories Margaret had read even after Lily could read herself, because stories sound better in Grandma's voice. At 7:26 a.m., Margaret Rose Harmon took her final breath, her hand still clasped in her granddaughter's. She's gone, Lily whispered, her composure finally breaking as tears spilled down her cheeks. Grandma's gone. Ethan, operating on instinct rather than experience, gathered the child into his arms as she sobbed against his chest. For the first time since his own childhood loss, he felt tears burn his eyes, a complex mix of grief for Margaret and compassion for the shaking child in his embrace. I know, he murmured, his voice rough. I know. The next hours passed in a blur of necessary arrangements, forms to sign, decisions to make, phone calls to place. Through it all, Lily remained close to Ethan's side, as if afraid he too might disappear if she looked away. By afternoon, exhaustion had overtaken them both. In the car returning to the penthouse, Lily finally spoke after hours of silence. What happens now? She asked, echoing her earlier question, but with new immediacy. Ethan had spent the morning making practical arrangements, but the emotional landscape ahead remained uncharted territory. We'll have a funeral, he said gently. A chance to say goodbye and celebrate your grandmother's life. And then, he hesitated, then we'll find our way forward together. But what about school? And where will I live? And what about all our things in the apartment? The questions tumbled out, revealing the practical concerns beneath her grief. You'll continue at Manhattan Prep, Ethan said firmly, grateful for concrete answers to offer. And you'll live with me, as you have been. As for your apartment, we can go there whenever you'd like, to get your things or just to visit. Lily nodded, absorbing this. Grandma said you'd be my guardian. Is that like being a parent? Legally, yes. Ethan chose his words carefully. I'll be responsible for you, for your education, your health, your well-being. But I know I'm not your father, Lily. I wouldn't presume to replace your parents or your grandmother. But you'll take care of me? Until I'm grown up? Yes. The enormity of this commitment settled over him, not as a burden, but as a solemn responsibility he found himself increasingly determined to fulfill. That's what your grandmother wanted, and it's what I want too. For the first time that day, Lily's expression lightened slightly. Okay, she said, with the simple acceptance children sometimes offer in the face of life-altering changes. At the penthouse, Ethan's housekeeper had prepared a light meal, which neither of them had appetite to eat. Lily retreated to her room, emerging hours later with red-rimmed eyes and her sketchbook. "Can I sit with you?" she asked, finding Ethan at his desk, mechanically answering emails. Of course. He cleared a space for her, watching as she opened to a fresh page and began to draw with focused intensity. They sat in companionable silence, the only sounds the scratch of her pencil and the soft click of his keyboard. Gradually, Ethan found himself typing less and watching her more, fascinated by the technical precision with which she rendered what appeared to be a garden layout. "What are you designing?" he finally asked. "A memorial garden," she replied without looking up. "For Grandma, at the hospital." Ethan moved closer to see her work, an elegant space with curved pathways, seating areas, and specifically labeled plantings. "These plants have special meaning." Lily nodded. Lavender was Grandma's favorite, and these, she pointed to another section, are forget-me-nots, for remembering. The thoughtfulness of the design moved him. "It's beautiful, Lily. Would you like to actually create this? We could propose it as an addition to the hospital grounds." She looked up, hope breaking through. "Grief. Really? You could do that?" "We could do that," he corrected gently. "Together." The planning of Margaret's funeral and the memorial garden project provided structure in the difficult days that followed. Ethan found himself navigating unfamiliar territory, selecting hymns and readings for the service, helping Lily craft a simple eulogy, guiding her through waves of grief that crashed without warning. His corporate responsibilities receded to the background for the first time in his adult life. When Claire called with urgent matters, he handled them briefly and returned his attention to the child who had upended his carefully controlled existence. The night before the funeral, he found Lily sitting on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket as she stared at the city lights. "Can't sleep?" he asked, joining her. She shook her head. "I keep thinking about tomorrow, about saying goodbye." Ethan sat beside her, searching for words of comfort and finding none that didn't sound hollow. Would it help to talk about her? Lily considered this. "Maybe. What do you remember about her, from when you were little?" The question opened a door to memories Ethan had sealed away decades ago. "She made the best oatmeal cookies," he said slowly, "with cinnamon and raisins, and she always seemed to know when I was upset, even when I tried to hide it. She did that with me too." Lily's face brightened. She'd say, "Your smile isn't reaching your eyes, sweet pea." Nah, and then she'd make hot chocolate and we'd talk about it. "She used to read to me," Ethan continued, the memory surfacing unexpectedly. "After my parents died, I had terrible nightmares. She'd sit by my bed and read until I fell asleep. She read to me every night, even after I could read by myself," Lily said. "She said stories sound better in Grandma's voice." She was right about that. They traded memories as the night deepened, finding unexpected comfort in shared experiences separated by decades. When Lily finally began to droop with exhaustion, Ethan helped her back to her room. "Will you read to me?" she asked as he tucked the blankets around her. "Like Grandma used to?" The request caught him off guard. "I'm not sure I'd be very good at it." "That's okay." She pulled a worn copy of The Secret Garden from her nightstand. This was our favorite. We were on chapter 7. Ethan accepted the book, settling awkwardly in the chair beside her bed. His voice, accustomed to boardroom declarations and financial analyses, felt stiff as he began reading about Mary Lennox discovering the key to the hidden garden. But as the pages turned, something shifted. The story about a lonely, difficult child finding healing through unexpected connections resonated in ways he hadn't anticipated. His voice softened, found its rhythm. When he glanced up, several chapters later, Lily was finally asleep, her face peaceful for the first time in days. Carefully marking the page, Ethan placed the book on the nightstand and switched off the lamp. Tomorrow would bring the formal goodbye to Margaret, but tonight had offered something unexpected, a quiet moment of connection that felt, in its way, like a beginning. The memorial garden broke ground 6 weeks after Margaret's funeral. Lily stood beside Ethan at the dedication ceremony, solemn in a navy dress, as the hospital board praised her design and Margaret's years of community service. When asked to speak, she approached the podium with the same determined dignity she'd shown throughout the turbulent weeks of adjustment. My grandma always said that gardens are special because they need both sunshine and rain to grow, she said, her voice clear despite her nervousness. Just like people need both happy and sad times to become who they're supposed to be. Ethan, watching from the side, felt an unexpected surge of pride. In the midst of profound loss, this remarkable child continued to find wisdom and purpose. If only he had shown half her resilience at that age. Life had settled into new routines since Margaret's passing. Lily attended Manhattan Prep, where her academic excellence continued despite her personal challenges. Ethan had restructured his work schedule, delegating more than he'd ever thought possible to ensure he was home by dinner most evenings. Bedtime reading had become a ritual neither of them acknowledged, but both privately treasured. Yet beneath the surface stability, adjustments continued on both sides. Lily's grief emerged in unexpected moments. A sudden withdrawal during meals, nightmares that left her calling for a grandmother who would never answer again. And Ethan, despite his best intentions, sometimes found himself reverting to the emotional distance that had defined his adult life. The dedication ceremony concluded with the planting of a lavender bush, Margaret's favorite. As attendees dispersed, Lily remained beside the freshly turned earth, lost in thought. "You did wonderfully," Ethan said, approaching carefully. "Your grandmother would have been very proud." Lily nodded, her expression difficult to read. "Do you think she can see it from heaven?" Ethan, who had abandoned religious conviction alongside other emotional attachments long ago, found himself unwilling to dismiss her need for comfort. "I believe she knows," he said simply, "and I know she would love it." Back at the penthouse, Lily retreated to her room while Ethan reviewed the work emails that had accumulated during the ceremony. When she hadn't emerged after an hour, he went to check on her, finding her curled on her bed, clutching a photograph of Margaret. "I miss her so much," she whispered as he sat beside her. "It feels like a big hole inside me." Ethan recognized the description from his own childhood loss, though he'd responded by building walls around that hole rather than acknowledging it. "I know," he said gently. "That feeling, it doesn't go away completely, but it changes over time. Becomes something you can carry. Did yours change after your parents died?" The direct question pierced his careful defenses. "I didn't let it," he admitted. "I pushed it away instead of facing it. That was a mistake." Lily studied him with those disconcertingly perceptive eyes. "Is that why you don't have any pictures of them? Or talk about them?" Ethan stiffened involuntarily. "Perhaps. Grandma said it's important to remember the people we love, even when it hurts." She offered him the photograph she'd been holding. "Maybe you should try it sometime." The gentle suggestion from a grieving child struck deeper than any corporate negotiation ever had. "Maybe I should," he acknowledged, accepting the photo briefly before returning it to her care. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan found himself opening a safe he rarely accessed. Inside, beneath stock certificates and property deeds, lay a single envelope containing the only photographs he'd kept of his parents. With uncharacteristic hesitation, he removed them, studying faces he'd purposely tried to forget. His father's stern features so like his own, his mother's reserved smile, and between them a solemn boy of 7, already learning to hide his emotions behind a mask of composure. A soft voice broke his reverie. "Is that you?" He turned to find Lily in the doorway, a glass of water in hand. "Yes," he admitted, "and my parents." She approached cautiously, as if sensing the significance of the moment. "You look sad." I was, though I tried not to show it. He hesitated, then added, "My father believed that displays of emotion were signs of weakness." Lily considered this. "Grandma said feelings are just information about what's happening inside us. Not good or bad, just information. Your grandmother was wise in ways my family never was. Do you miss them, your parents?" The question would have been unthinkable from anyone else. "I miss who they might have been," he said finally. "I was still getting to know them when they died." Lily nodded with the profound understanding that sometimes comes to children who have faced similar losses. "That's how I feel about my mom and dad. I was only 7 when they died. I remember things about them, but not enough." The parallel struck Ethan forcefully. This child, losing her parents at the same age he had lost his, now losing her grandmother as well. Yet instead of building walls, she continued to reach outward, to seek connection. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "we could both make more effort to remember, to talk about the people we've lost." "I'd like that." She yawned suddenly, the late hour catching up with her. "Can we put those pictures somewhere we can see them?" Grandma had our family photos all over our apartment. Ethan glanced around his sterile, modernist living space, devoid of personal history. "I think that could be arranged." The following weekend brought another significant transition. It was time to clear Margaret's apartment, a task Ethan had postponed, sensing Lily's need for gradual separation. They arrived at the modest 2-bedroom in Queens on a sunny Saturday morning, Lily clutching her backpack with white-knuckled hands. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Ethan asked as they stood outside the door. "We can wait longer if you need to." She shook her head. Grandma wouldn't want her things just sitting here. She'd want them to help other people. Inside, the apartment was exactly as they'd left it weeks earlier. Neat, modestly furnished, and filled with evidence of a life centered around family. Photographs covered virtually every surface. Handmade Afghans draped across well-worn furniture. The kitchen shelves held mismatched mugs collected over decades. "Where do we start?" Lily asked, her voice small in the space that had been her home since birth. "Wherever you'd like," Ethan replied, letting her set the pace. "Perhaps with identifying things you want to keep." The process was both methodical and emotional. Lily moved from room to room, selecting treasured items: her grandmother's recipe box, a hand-knitted sweater, the quilt from her bed, books they'd read together. Each choice was accompanied by a story, a memory that Ethan carefully noted, recognizing these narratives as the threads that would help Lily maintain her connection to Margaret. In the bedroom closet, they found a carefully labeled box, "For Lily, when I'm gone." Inside were letters addressed to her for future milestones: her 16th birthday, high school graduation, wedding day, each sealed with Margaret's characteristic thoughtfulness. "She planned ahead," Lily whispered, running her fingers over the envelopes. "Even when she knew she wouldn't be here. She wanted to be part of your future," Ethan said quietly. "This was her way of staying with you." Beneath the letters lay a smaller envelope marked simply, "For Ethan." He opened it with uncharacteristically unsteady hands, finding a brief note in Margaret's familiar handwriting. "Dear Ethan, if you're reading this, I've left you with quite a responsibility. Thank you for accepting it. Lily is my heart's greatest treasure, and knowing she has you eases my passage. You may doubt yourself, your capacity for this kind of care, your ability to balance your work with her needs. But I've never doubted you. The boy I knew had extraordinary capacity for love before life taught him to guard his heart. Learn from her, Ethan. She knows how to live fully, even in the face of loss. And in teaching you, perhaps she'll heal as well, with enduring faith in you both. Margaret. He folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his jacket pocket before Lily could see the emotion it had stirred. By late afternoon, they had sorted the apartment's contents into categories: items for Lily to keep, donations to Margaret's church, a few pieces of furniture to be incorporated into the penthouse. As Lily walked through the half-empty rooms a final time, her composure finally broke. "I don't want to leave," she sobbed, curling into the window seat where she'd spent countless hours reading. "This is home." Ethan sat beside her, momentarily at a loss. His instinct to problem-solve seemed inadequate in the face of such raw grief. Instead, he did what Margaret might have done. He simply put his arm around Lily's shoulders and let her cry. "Your home isn't just these rooms," he said when her tears had subsided to hiccups. "It's the memories you carry with you, the love your grandmother gave you. Those things come with us." She leaned against him, exhausted. "But your apartment doesn't feel like home yet." "Then perhaps we should change that," he replied, an idea forming. Together. The following weeks brought transformation to the penthouse as Lily's belongings integrated with Ethan's sterile decor. Margaret's comfortable armchair found place near the window. Family photographs appeared on shelves previously reserved for design objects. The kitchen, once a showcase of unused high-end appliances, now housed Margaret's well-worn cookie sheets and mismatched mugs. More significant were the changes in Ethan himself. Board meetings were scheduled around school pickup times. Late-night conference calls with Tokyo took place after Lily's bedtime. The corporate warrior, who had routinely worked 18-hour days, now found himself learning to bake cookies from Margaret's recipe cards, supervised by a critical 10-year-old. "You're stirring too hard," Lily instructed, peering into the mixing bowl. "Grandma always said cookies need gentle hands." Ethan adjusted his technique, amused by the reversal of authority. "Like this? Better." She nodded approvingly. "Grandma would say you're a quick study." These domestic scenes still felt foreign to him, but increasingly less uncomfortable. There was satisfaction in creating something together, even something as simple as cookies. The corporate victories that had defined his worth for decades were being supplemented by new measures of success. Lily's improving sleep patterns, her gradual re-engagement with friends at school, the moments when genuine laughter replaced the polite smile she often wore. Not that the transition was without challenges. Ethan's temporary guardianship became permanent through a series of legal proceedings that culminated in a final adoption hearing. Outside the courtroom, his attorney had cautioned him about the magnitude of the commitment. "You understand this is irrevocable, Mr. Walker. You'll be legally her parent in every sense of the word." Ethan had glanced through the doorway where Lily waited, sketching quietly in her ever-present notebook. "I understand. It's just unusual in your position. A single man, CEO of a major corporation with no prior interest in parenthood. Yet here we are," Ethan had replied evenly. "Shall we proceed?" The corporate world had reacted with predictable speculation. Business publications questioned whether Ethan Walker was softening his legendary focus. Competitors whispered about potential vulnerabilities in the Walker empire. Board members expressed concerns about his reduced hours. Ethan addressed these challenges with characteristic directness at the quarterly board meeting. Lily's framed garden design prominently displayed behind him. "My priorities have expanded, not shifted," he informed the assembled executives. "If you review the Q3 results, you'll see that our profitability has actually increased 7% under the new management structure. Effective delegation, it turns out, creates operational efficiencies." What he didn't say, couldn't articulate even to himself yet, was how fundamentally his perspective had changed. The ruthless pursuit of market dominance that had driven him for decades now seemed hollow compared to the responsibility of guiding one child's future. At home, Lily continued to navigate her grief with the same resilience she'd shown from the start, though difficult moments still arose. The approach of Thanksgiving, their first major holiday without Margaret, triggered a particularly challenging period. "We always made pies together," Lily explained, pushing away her dinner one evening. 3 kinds: pumpkin, apple, and chocolate cream. Grandma let me crimp the edges. "We could make pies," Ethan offered. "I can't promise they'll be as good as Margaret's, but we could try her recipes." Lily shook her head. "It wouldn't be the same." She stared at her plate. Nothing is the same anymore. The familiar helplessness returned. The recognition that despite his resources and determination, Ethan couldn't fix this loss for her. He could provide stability, opportunity, even affection, but he couldn't restore what she truly wanted: her grandmother's presence. That night, unable to sleep, he found himself reading through Margaret's notebook again, searching for guidance. Among her practical notes about Lily's routines and preferences, one passage stood out. "When grief hits hard, distraction isn't the answer. Acknowledgement is. Light a candle, share a memory, make space for the sadness. Then, gently, find a way forward together." The next morning, Ethan called Claire. "I need you to clear my schedule for the day before Thanksgiving," he instructed, "and find someone who can teach 2 people to bake pies, traditional Thanksgiving varieties." On the appointed day, Lily returned from school to find the penthouse kitchen transformed. Margaret's mixing bowls and rolling pins sat on the counter alongside professional-grade baking ingredients. A patient culinary instructor waited to guide them through the precise science of pie crust. "What's all this?" Lily asked, confusion replacing her recent melancholy. "I thought we might start a new tradition," Ethan explained carefully. "Not to replace baking with your grandmother, but to honor it, to remember her by doing something she loved with her recipes." Lily approached the counter cautiously, running her fingers over her grandmother's worn rolling pin. "Grandma would like that," she said finally. "She always said traditions need to grow and change." For the next several hours, they worked side by side, transforming basic ingredients into the promised trio of pies. The results were imperfect, crusts a bit too thick, fillings slightly overcooked, but the process itself proved unexpectedly healing. As they placed the finished pies on the cooling rack, Lily surveyed their work with critical satisfaction. "Not bad for beginners," she pronounced. "Grandma would say we have potential." "High praise indeed," Ethan replied, wiping flour from his hands. "Maybe next year will be better," Lily added casually, then froze as the implication of her words registered. The acknowledgement of a future, a continuation, a life extending beyond loss. Ethan recognized the significance of the moment. "I'm sure we will be," he said simply. "Practice makes perfect, after all." That evening, as they shared slices of their imperfect but earnest creations, Lily broke their comfortable silence. "I've been thinking about something." "What's that?" "About names." She focused intently on her pie. "At school, when teachers call roll, they say Lily Harmon, but that's not really right anymore, is it, since you adopted me?" Ethan set down his fork, giving her his full attention. "Legally, you could use Walker now, yes. But you don't have to change your name if you don't want to." "I've been Lily Harmon my whole life," she said thoughtfully. "It was my parents' name and Grandma's. But now," she met his gaze directly, "now you're my family too." The simple declaration affected Ethan more deeply than any corporate achievement ever had. "Yes," he said quietly, "we are family now. So I was thinking maybe I could be Lily Harmon Walker, to keep both parts." "I think that sounds perfect," Ethan replied, his voice uncharacteristically rough with emotion. "A name that honors where you've come from and where you are now." Lily nodded, satisfied with the resolution. "Grandma would like it. She always said you were special to her." like family. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan stood at the window of his transformed penthouse, reflecting on the extraordinary journey of the past few months. The corporate titan who had defined success through acquisitions and profit margins now found himself measuring achievement differently, through a child's tentative steps toward healing, through his own gradual opening to genuine connection. Margaret's final letter echoed in his mind. Learn from her, Ethan. She knows how to live fully, even in the face of loss. Perhaps, he thought, they were teaching each other. Spring arrived in New York with characteristic determination, green shoots, pushing through sidewalk cracks and cherry blossoms framing the park's edges. 6 months had passed since Margaret's death, and while grief still visited Lily in quiet moments, it no longer dominated her days. "The memorial garden looks amazing," she announced, bursting into Ethan's home office with tablet in hand. "The hospital sent pictures. Everything's blooming." Ethan set aside quarterly projections to examine the photos. Margaret's garden in full flower, with patients and staff enjoying the tranquil space. "It's beautiful, Lily, just as you designed it. Can we visit? Today, maybe?" Her eyes, once shadowed by loss, now sparkled with excitement. "I want to see it in person." "I have a board meeting at 4, Ethan began automatically, then caught himself. 6 months ago, nothing would have superseded Walker Medical's quarterly board meeting. Now, he found himself reconsidering. "But that leaves us the morning. Let me make a call." As he rearranged his schedule, something that had become increasingly common, Ethan reflected on how thoroughly his priorities had shifted. The driven executive still existed, still led his company with strategic brilliance, but no longer at the expense of everything else. An hour later, they stood in Margaret's garden, now a popular respite for patients and medical staff alike. Lily moved through the space with proprietary satisfaction, checking plants against her original design, noting which flowers were thriving and which needed attention. "The forget-me-nots are perfect," she declared, kneeling beside a patch of delicate blue blooms. "Grandma would love them." "She would indeed," agreed a familiar voice. They turned to find Dr. Levinson approaching, white coat flapping in the spring breeze. "I thought I might find you here," he said, smiling. "The garden has become quite famous within the hospital. Patients request rooms with views of it." Lily beamed with quiet pride. "Really? That's what I hoped would happen. In fact," Dr. Levinson continued, "the hospital board has a proposal for you both. The new pediatric wing is nearing completion, and we'd like to incorporate a similar healing garden in its central courtyard. We're calling it the Margaret Harmon Children's Garden." Lily's eyes widened. "Another garden? For children?" "Exactly. And we were hoping the original designer might consider creating a new plan." Dr. Levinson's gaze shifted to Ethan. "With her? Guardian's permission, of course." Ethan studied Lily's face, seeing the immediate spark of inspiration. "I think that could be arranged," he replied, "provided it doesn't interfere with schoolwork." "It would be schoolwork," Lily countered quickly. "Ms. Clayton said I could do an independent study project this semester. This could be it." Her enthusiasm was infectious, reminding Ethan of how far they'd come from those first, silent, grief-laden days. The reserved, careful child who had appeared at his hospital doorway had gradually revealed her true nature, curious, determined, and remarkably resilient. "Then I believe we have a designer for the new garden," he told Dr. Levinson, who beamed and produced a business card. "Excellent. Our landscape architect would love to collaborate with Lily. Here's his contact information." As they left the hospital grounds, Lily clutched the business card with reverent excitement. "A real project," she murmured, "with a real architect. You've earned it," Ethan said sincerely. "Your first design has brought comfort to countless patients. It's what Grandma would have wanted." Lily slipped her hand into his with the easy familiarity that had developed between them, a gesture that still occasionally surprised Ethan with its simple trust. She always said, "My drawings shouldn't stay hidden in notebooks." Back at the penthouse, No longer a sterile showplace, but a genuine home with evidence of Lily's presence throughout. She immediately settled at the dining table with her sketchbook, already conceptualizing the new garden. Ethan left her to her creative process, retreating to his office to prepare for the board meeting. He was reviewing financial projections when a notification appeared on his calendar. Science Fair, 7 p.m., Manhattan Prep Gymnasium. He stared at it, momentarily confused. Lily had mentioned her science fair project, an elaborate ecosystem model demonstrating urban sustainability, but he'd assumed it was weeks away. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Ethan?" Lily stood in the doorway, sketch in hand. "I have an idea for the children's garden. Want to see?" "Of course." He gestured her in, then pointed to his calendar. "Is the science fair tonight?" Her expression fell slightly. "Yes. I put it on your calendar last month, but I know you're really busy with the board meeting. It's okay if you can't come." The careful neutrality in her voice spoke volumes. Despite their growing closeness, she still expected disappointment, still protected herself from relying too completely on his presence. "The board meeting ends at 6, Ethan said, making a swift calculation. "I'll come directly to the school afterward." "Really?" Hope crept into her voice despite her effort to contain it. "You don't have to if it's too complicated. I'll be there," he promised. "I want to see this ecosystem model you've been working on so diligently." Her smile was worth any corporate inconvenience. "It's pretty cool. I used some of your sustainability research from Walker Medical's new building designs." As she spread her garden sketch across his desk, Ethan marveled at how thoroughly this child had integrated into his life, and he into hers. The careful separation he'd maintained between personal and professional worlds had dissolved, creating something richer than either alone. The board meeting ran precisely on schedule, a tribute to Ethan's reformed management style. Where he once would have allowed discussions to extend indefinitely, he now guided conversations with efficient focus, aware of the commitment waiting across town. At 6:05 p.m., he was in his town car, heading toward Manhattan Prep. His phone rang, Claire with post-meeting follow-ups. "The board approved the new research initiative," she reported, "and the executive committee would like another meeting next week about the Boston expansion." "Schedule it during school hours," Ethan instructed, watching the city pass outside his window. "And Claire, block off my calendar for the spring school concert in 2 weeks. Priority A." "Already done, sir." Her voice carried a smile. "Lily mentioned it yesterday when she called to confirm your lunch meeting." The easy relationship that had developed between his assistant and his adoptive daughter still surprised Ethan. Without his explicit direction, his professional orbit had expanded to include Lily's needs and schedule, accommodated by staff who had never previously considered their employer's personal life. At the school, the gymnasium hummed with activity. Students stationed beside project displays, parents navigating the crowded aisles, teachers evaluating presentations with clipboards in hand. Ethan scanned the room for Lily, finally spotting her at a large display near the center. Unlike many of her peers, who fidgeted nervously or called to passing adults, Lily stood composed beside her elaborate model, explaining its features to a small group of attentive listeners. Her dark hair was neatly braided, her school uniform immaculate. Something in her posture, confident yet unpretentious, reminded Ethan powerfully of Margaret. He approached as her audience dispersed, catching the end of her explanation about water reclamation systems. When she spotted him, her professional demeanor briefly gave way to genuine delight. "You made it!" she exclaimed, then immediately collected herself. I'm glad you could come, Mr. Walker." The formal address, used only in public settings, made him smile. "I wouldn't have missed it, Ms. Harmon Walker. Now tell me about this impressive model." For the next 15 minutes, Lily guided him through her creation. a miniature city with integrated green spaces, solar collection, rainwater systems, and urban agriculture. The technical precision of her work was remarkable for her age, but more impressive was her passionate articulation of the underlying principles. The point is that cities don't have to be just concrete and pollution, she explained earnestly. They can be designed to work with nature instead of against it. Philosophy Walker Medical might well adopt, Ethan noted, genuinely impressed. Have you considered how these principles could apply to hospital design? Her eyes lit up at the suggestion. That's what I want to do with the children's garden. Make it not just pretty but functional, gathering rainwater, providing food for the cafeteria, creating habitat for birds and butterflies. As she elaborated on her vision, a woman in a lab coat approached with clipboard in hand. "Lily Harmon Walker," she inquired, smiling as Lily nodded. "I'm Dr. Chen from the Citywide Science Committee. Your project has been selected as a finalist for the New York State Sustainability Challenge." Lily's composure momentarily slipped. "Really? The state competition?" "Indeed. Your integration of ecological principles with urban design is exactly the kind of innovative thinking the challenge rewards." Dr. Chen glanced at Ethan. "The finals are held in Albany next month. A parent or guardian would need to accompany you." "I'd be happy to," Ethan said immediately, feeling a surge of pride that matched any corporate achievement. Her school schedule permitting, of course. As Dr. Chen moved on to the next finalist, Lily stood perfectly still, processing the news. "The state competition," she repeated softly. "Grandma always said I could do it, but I didn't really believe her." "Your grandmother was very wise," Ethan replied. "She knew your capabilities even before you did." Lily nodded, her expression turning contemplative. Do you think she knows about the competition and the new garden and everything?" The question, part theological, part emotional, might once have stymied Ethan, who had spent decades avoiding such intangible considerations. Now he found himself answering with surprising conviction. "I believe she does. Not in any way I can explain logically, but yes, I think she knows." "That's what I think too," Lily agreed. "Sometimes when I'm drawing or working on a project, I can almost hear her telling me to check my measurements or add more color." "She remains part of who you are," Ethan said, "of who you're becoming." As other parents approached to admire Lily's project, Ethan stepped back, observing with quiet satisfaction. The science fair, the state competition, the children's garden, all were milestones in Lily's journey forward, steps toward the future Margaret had wished for her. Later that evening, as they shared ice cream to celebrate Lily's selection as a finalist, she asked an unexpected question. "Do you ever miss your old life? Before me, I mean." Ethan considered the query with the honesty they'd established between them. "I miss certain conveniences," he admitted, "the simplicity of answering only to myself, the uninterrupted focus on work." She nodded, accepting this without offense. "That makes sense. But," he continued carefully, "I don't miss the emptiness, the penthouse that was never really a home, the achievements that meant nothing once accomplished." "Really?" Her eyes searched his, looking for confirmation. "Really?" He smiled slightly. "Your grandmother was right, you know. In her letter to me, she said you would teach me how to live fully, not just work successfully. And you have." Lily ducked her head, pleased but embarrassed by the declaration. "We've helped each other, I think. Grandma would say that's how family works." "Family," Ethan repeated, the word still new in his personal vocabulary. "Yes, I believe she would." As spring deepened toward summer, their lives settled into complementary rhythms. Ethan continued to lead Walker Medical with his characteristic strategic brilliance, but now within boundaries that preserved time for school events, weekend excursions, and quiet evenings of reading or designing together. Lily thrived academically, while gradually rebuilding her emotional resilience. The state science competition brought a second-place finish and a special commendation from the Environmental Committee. The Children's Garden project advanced from concept to construction, with Lily making weekly visits to the site with the landscape architect. On a warm June evening, nearly 9 months after Margaret's passing, they visited her grave together, bringing fresh flowers and updates on their lives. As Lily arranged lavender stems in the cemetery vase, she spoke naturally to her grandmother's headstone, sharing news of the garden's progress and her upcoming piano recital. Ethan stood back, giving her privacy for this ritual that seemed to bring her comfort. When she finally stepped away, her expression was peaceful rather than grief-stricken. "Ready?" he asked gently. She nodded, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something important?" "Of course. Would it be okay if I called you Dad sometimes? Not all the time, just when it feels right." Her words tumbled out nervously. "I know you're not trying to replace my real dad, and I still remember him, but you're not just my guardian anymore, you're family," Ethan finished quietly, genuinely moved by the request. "Lily, I would be honored, truly." She smiled, relieved by his response. "Grandma once told me that family isn't just who you're born to, it's also who you choose to love. And we chose each other, didn't we?" "We did," he agreed, offering his hand as they walked back toward the car. With a little help from a very wise woman. As they drove through the city streets toward home, their home, Ethan reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 9 months. From the isolated corporate titan to the guardian of a remarkable child. From a life measured in acquisitions and stock prices to one enriched by bedtime stories and science projects. Margaret's final gift had not been merely entrusting him with Lily's care, but returning to him the capacity for connection he'd buried beneath decades of ambition. In saving Lily, he had, in many ways, saved himself. At a stoplight, he glanced at Lily, who was sketching ideas for her next garden design, her face intent with creative focus. She must have sensed his gaze because she looked up, offering a smile of simple trust and affection. "What?" she asked. "Just thinking," he replied, "about how fortunate we are to have found each other." "Grandma would say it wasn't luck at all," Lily responded with certainty. "She'd say it was exactly what was meant to happen." As the light changed and they continued homeward, Ethan found himself inclined to agree. Some connections, it seemed, were destined, even for those who had forgotten how to connect at all. If you've made it this far, consider subscribing and commenting on what you liked most about this story. Your opinion is very important.